Hello, everyone. We are back with another episode of Vintage Club Conversations. This week, our featured guest is Lacey Lundschen, the VP of Enterprise and Mid Market Sales at one of the most well known Silicon Valley tech companies, Docker.
Lacey Lundschen joins us with over a decade of experience in sales, with notable roles such as Regional VP at Starburst, Regional Director Corporate Sales at MongoDB, and various positions at Dialpad and Rackspace. Her experience spans enterprise account management, new business acquisition, and solutions consulting. Today, Lacey leads the enterprise and mid-market sales organization at Docker, aiming to create scalable, repeatable, and transparent systems that will guide her teams towards success.
Welcome to Vintage Club Conversations, Lacey.
Thanks, Manisha. What an introduction. I really appreciate it. And I am so excited to be here.
We are excited too. Well, to kick things off, I would like to ask what brought you to sales as an area to specialize in? What was that aha moment for you? It's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually started out in sales in college. So I worked at AT&T. I sold cell phones, and at the time I did that for over 3 years, and I enjoyed that space. And then I took some time off, and I went to a smaller company, and then I got into my first tech job at a company called Rackspace, and I was kind of doing that very natural entry level SDR work, and for some of our enterprise sellers at the time. And within less than 12 months, I was like, I'm ready. I wanted to get into full cycle selling. I loved kind of that challenge of it. I loved talking to people. I loved kind of, figuring out what they needed, how we could help. And so I was kind of hooked from there.
Interesting. And since you started very early in sales, which skills have you found to be the most critical to your success? Some skills which you think you have compounded on from last, few years or decades.
Yeah, I think one of the most important skills for myself, and I would say for any seller, is staying really curious. And I think you hear that a lot, but when you're sitting in a customer conversation, when you're sitting in any conversation, personal or professional, it's like really trying to understand what's going on, what that other person is wanting to get out of that conversation, what's going on in their world. And that stems into, again, a lot of our customer conversations. Sometimes we get into those discussions with a template of things we need to figure out instead of really listening. And so that active listening, that natural curiosity has been such a skill for me and for some of the best sellers that I've worked with, that I've hired, that I've recruited. And I'd say right behind that is really the ability to deal with the unknown, adversity. I have been in every size of company at this point, the really big ones, the MongoDBs. I've done quite a few startups now. And what I've learned is things constantly evolve, things constantly change. We really need adaptable sellers, right? That kind of look for the solutions in those problems alongside us. And so those are some of those skills that I think have been some of the most important for me to continue to mature, but also what I've seen as some of the most helpful as a seller, as a leader in this space.
Totally. I think solving problems for customers, if you're curious and almost always available for the customers instantaneously, is really, one of very big strength, which not many people realize. It's an unsaid thing, I think, but it's a really big strength.
Yeah, completely agree.
Great. So you have been working with a lot of tech companies, right? And when I say tech companies like Docker or MongoDB or Starburst, which actually sells to engineers, which is very difficult, right? And it becomes very crucial for sales teams to be super good at technical language and stay continuously updated on product enhancements, features, security guidelines, data privacy, and so on, right? How do you, as VP of Sales, ensure your team is equipped with all this technical knowledge and the speed needed to sell effectively?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there's a couple of different pieces to it, right? And I think one of the second things you asked is what I'll start with. You talked about how does a sales team, and for me, my field team, stay up to date with all of the different product enhancements, especially at a company like Docker, right? And I would say we are constantly working on ensuring our sellers, and there's no magic bullet here, constantly evolving this, but that our sellers, our leaders, myself, have a really cohesive relationship with our product and our engineering teams. Again, don't get me wrong, I don't have the magic wand here, but we really candidly still focus on this today, right? How do we make sure that the communication is going back and forth between those two teams? And what that would look like in ideal state, right, is our sellers are hearing things on the front end. They're hearing challenges. They're hearing customer feedback, right? They're taking that back to product. Product is then incorporating that. They're listening. They're marrying that together with their own product roadmap. And then as they start to push out different features, different enhancements, that communication is really clear on why they're doing that, who that feature is for. And it can really help those different sellers talk to those different problems and challenges based on the different product enhancements, right? And so again, it's a really strong relationship that has to happen between the product engineering and selling teams, and even marketing, of course, to make sure that as things are rolled out, the field understands why they're so important, who they're important to, how to talk about that value. And that's just, I think one of the highest priority things you can do as a company is to continue to create that really clear communication path between those teams. I want to answer the other part of your questions, but anything there you might have a second question on.
So, see, I have been a CTO, and I know it's not easy to sell to tech teams, right?
Right.
Because especially when you're selling to engineers and you're talking about a feature in terms of even velocity, right? At Docker, what velocity, feature velocity you have, engineers who are actually using the product understand, is it fast or is it slow? When you're selling to any other teams other than engineering teams, there is not enough, context or knowledge about the timelines or the complexity of what you're building, but engineers can really understand it easily. So in that, from that perspective, what are some of the unique challenges you have encountered when selling to B2B tech buyers?
Yes. So the biggest opportunity that yes does present itself as a challenge when selling to these more, I'd say, technically complex personas, when you're selling a really technically complex product, right? Especially, I'd say you ramp that up even more when you're selling an open source product, which is the third company I've had that has also had an open source product. To kind of what you're saying, they're very familiar with the product usually already. Is actually taking a step back, right, to really understand what that technical persona and who you're talking to really is trying to get out of that conversation, right? I think what the challenge is that when you're in these technical conversations with these technical personas, your sellers on my end tend to kind of skip some of the most important parts of their qualification process and their discovery process regarding, hey, let's slow down, Manisha. These are really technical questions you're asking, and I want to make sure you understand the features, right? But why are these things important to you, right? What's the current state of the things going on at your company? What are some of those challenges? What are the impacts of these things that we're talking about not being solved? And I think that slowing down in those conversations as a seller, when you're on the phone with a really technically complex person that is really smart, usually sometimes knows a lot about your product, can be really it can be really hard to recognize in the moment what you need to do to really slow down and pause, right? And so I'd say a good example, really simple example, a few years ago, I was coaching one of my reps through a discovery call. We do a lot of that, right? We're listening to the call. What'd you do here? What can we do differently? And we listened to this call, and they had let this engineering persona, we'll say, drive the entire conversation into this really technical deep dive. And that persona actually asked all the questions about the features of our product. And so I asked a really simple question when we listened to the call. Do you have any idea what pain or initiative that engineer is trying to solve, or why they even took our call, right? And they didn't have any idea. And it was a really good teaching moment because, again, a lot of our sellers, if we don't train them, enable them correctly, kind of freeze up when those technical questions start coming their way, especially when there's like competitor solutions being brought up. And so again, I constantly reiterate how important it is to slow down, to really understand why those questions are being asked in those conversations. And I would say, to have a seller that has the ability to do that, a lot of that responsibility too falls on the go-to-market organization, right? And I mean every part of the go-to-market organization, product engineering, sales, marketing, customer success, all of us working really well together to say these are the different types of persona groups that we target, right? We really understand those groups. We have been able to fill it on them. And so when they get into these conversations, those sellers feel really equipped to have those conversations, to slow them down, to ask the right questions, right? And so I would say that is just one of those unique challenges. Is you think you have to be the most technical person in the room, and you get into that technical deep dive, and you let the customer and prospect drive that conversation, instead of really taking a few steps back and slowing down.
Wow. Lacey, you make it sound so easy, but I'm sure there's a lot of, processes or a lot of thinking behind this. Are there any specific frameworks or approaches you have relied on? Because you have had this, consistent success with what you have been doing. So, do you follow any specific frameworks which help you sell more?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of ways to answer this. We are definitely a command of message, discovery, qualification, process oriented go-to-market organization in terms of like how we enter into conversations with our customers, what we want to understand about them. We're really trying to coach our sellers to understand what's going on for them currently, what are the things that they can't do, or what are the most painful things that are happening, what's kind of the impact of those things, right? What are the places they want to go that they can't, right? Because those problems are continuing to show up. And then, hey, where can we come in and bridge the gap between those two things? The problems, the places they want to go, and let's talk about those few things that really help them, instead of having a sales rep that just tells you every feature about every part of our product, right? And so that deep, really thorough discovery qualification process is what I ingrain constantly into our sales teams. Is what are they doing? Why are they buying from us? Especially, and even more so, when you have a company like Docker who has so many customers, right? And this applies to companies that are just starting out trying to get customers, but I think it's even more important for those companies that have, we have over 79,000 customers. We need to go back and understand at a really, really intimate level why they bought from us, what value they wanted to get from us. Are they getting that value, right? And again, that all comes back to our sellers being able to ask the right questions, understand the right people that they're talking to. And I'd say, it's been an ongoing process even for us recently at Docker, is really breaking out the different groups that we should be talking to within our day-to-day as sellers. I mean, it's not perfect, right? But we've done that by breaking them out into 3 different persona groups for our sales teams. And based on those groups, these are the types of things that they care about. So when you're in the conversations with your engineers, you need to ask these questions, and they're going to care about these things. But you have to continue to go to the different persona groups, kind of those C levels. They're going to care about different pieces of your product, right? And they're actually usually the people that own the biggest issues and the biggest budgets to solve them, right? And so you got to take the information from all these different persona groups and really put it together in a business case that allows you to offer a solution that leads you to a signed contract, obviously. But you only get those signed contracts, especially in the kind of economic environment we're in, by really understanding your customer, and understanding the different people at that company and what they care about.
Wow. Yeah, I think when you're talking to a CTO versus when you're actually talking to, engineers or engineering leads, they have different pain points, right? Many times engineers might think, hey, this is a small thing which we can build internally. Why do we have to really rely on a product for this?
Right.
That's a very natural reaction of every engineer, I would say, to any problem. But then the CTO knows that we can't afford to do this internally because this is not our core thing that we are selling. So we should rather focus on our core things and use other platforms to expedite rest of the things.
Yeah, and I think that right there is where, if we don't do that well as a sales team to understand that kind of cost, right? The quantification of, if you aren't able to do the things that you need to do as a company, right? The things that you are great at, if you are stuck maintaining code, worrying about the security of your images, like if those are the things your developers are worried about, one, they're not happy, and the developer experience is so important. It's just going to continue to be more important, right? But secondly, more importantly, is not only are they probably unhappy with the work that they have to do because it's not the core, you know, innovation that they wanted to do, it's slowing you down as a company. And you have to do things quicker than you've ever done them before to stay competitive, right? And so that right there is the premise of how you sell the best deals, right? And how you add value to companies. It's really understanding what's the impact, the quantification of continuing to have to deal with the problems and issues you have today, right? And where can we come in and help?
Totally. And with all the AI advancements as well, even the engineering teams have to move really, really fast because of the competitive landscape, right? I mean, it has become easier than ever to build products today. So speed and innovation has become even more important. So I think that build versus buy decision is kind of slowly, especially in big companies, I have observed, getting more biased towards buying the platforms. If this is not the core strength, if this is not the core of what a company does, it's better to buy these SaaS platforms or AI platforms and increase the speed and the velocity of development.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think even a step further than that is the, the growing awareness, hyper awareness on ensuring the security of the solutions you're using, right? And trying to take some of that and offload that to these more secure solutions that have a different offering where your team doesn't have to worry about those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about AI, right? As a tech company who is serving engineers, you guys likely face significant pressure to stay at the forefront of AI advancements, right? How do you feel AI has impacted the platform as a service space till now? And what are your thoughts in terms of how will AI influence sales strategies?
Yes, AI. It has become such I don't even think it's a buzzword. I think it's just so prevalent everywhere, right? AI has impacted everything at this point. There's really no company that will not feel the pressure of AI. Small, large businesses, the individual AEs on my team, their process has changed. The way they can, the process of qualification, the process of research, on and on. And I really believe AI can be so helpful. It will never fully remove humans. I think there's a lot of um, I'd say a lot of fear around it, but I think it can be so useful in a lot of different ways and a lot of different tooling that you can use. And I think, again, it's going to enhance and speed up productivity in all roles within a company, not just sales, but I think with every single role. Um, Obviously, Docker is trying to help the developer do that, but I've seen it again just in my front line, in my own role, right? It's going to optimize how time is spent, right? It's going to automate a lot of those repetitive tasks that employees have to do. Like, again, say a sales rep can now focus more on building better relationships and solving customer challenges versus all of the prep and the research and follow up on lead qualification. I think there's going to be a lot of automation and tooling there. And then I also think, again, this is where you probably have, a lot of different people on different sides of AI, but it will continue to allow for a lot of hyper personalization of buying behaviors. Like the usage data we'll be able to use, the intent signals. And again, it'll be used for companies to drive even more tailored messaging and offerings for the customers than they already do. And then lastly, I think there's going to be a whole side of predictive analytics with AI to really help companies, again, identify potential churn risk, the most high value accounts they have. I really think it'll propel that space as well. And of course, Docker, I wouldn't say feels the pressure, but they want to be a leader in this space. So we're embracing AI throughout our own platform and throughout the developer experience as much as we can. Over the past year, Docker has introduced a lot of AI like powered features that really help streamline that workflow for the developer. We have the Docker extension for GitHub Copilot, right? That really extends that technology to accelerate development with Docker. We have the Docker Gen AI stack, right? I mean, that's just, again, accelerating the incorporation of those LLMs and how you do that into your code. And then we have a lot of really strong partnerships like with NVIDIA to really support that tight integration with Docker Desktop. And then separate from that, Docker is just really fostering a lot of like open source community involvement in this AI ML space, right? There's an ongoing series, I believe it's called the Docker Labs Gen AI series, and it's really just an exploration series where we are going through what are the different AI like developer tools that are out there, like how can they be used with Docker, and we're kind of exploring right alongside you. I think one of the most recent offerings that have come out of this, and it's definitely still very early stages, a product that we have allowed to be used by the public called Gordon, and it's a Docker AI agent that's, again, really early stages, but it's really focused on just optimizing Docker related tasks for now. And it's going to continue to evolve, but I think that is what companies have to do, like continue to explore, continue to figure out how AI can come in and help. And it can help in every aspect of your business, right? And I think we're going to continue to lead it as much as we can there.
Yeah, totally. I think you covered so many amazing things. A lot of things. I think I was able to relate to almost everything because when I have been an engineer, so I know, how Gen AI is actually increasing the productivity. And second, because we are currently helping sales teams improve their productivity. So I can totally relate to everything which you said around hyper personalization to discovery to customer research to understand the pain point, because all this knowledge for sales teams is spread across so many applications today. Like you are having, especially when you're doing an enterprise deal, you are having calls with customers over 12 months, right? How are you even going to remember what is the pain point that customer told me 10 months back? So I think we are a huge believer of AI, and we are helping sales teams with AI, and we also use AI a lot internally. Immediately after this, I'm going back to my developers and I'll ask them to check Docker Labs.
Yes. I think that AI is becoming less of this like scary word for a lot of people, and they're starting to really dip their toes in and figure out how it can help and help their company,
Yeah. Embracing AI is the only way to go. And because things are moving so rapidly, the decisions to actually buy AI tools is much faster than, decisions that committees used to take to buy any other SaaS tools.
Right. And I think, for instance, again, my sales team will use AI to really help them generate a lot of the preparation and research aspects of planning for customers and understanding their accounts, but they still have to go in and understand that information themselves, right? And so again, it's still, you still have the human element that's so necessary there. And I always reiterate that you can't just put something into ChatGPT, spit it out, and that's your information you need. You have to understand it. You have to formulate the questions that you need to ask from that. But I definitely think it's going to continue to evolve, and it's going to optimize things, and it's going to really speed up in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I think it's acting more like your sidekick or teammate instead of
Yeah,
replacing you at any time.
exactly. Right. So for instance, with the Docker AI agent, Gordon, you can ask like general Docker related questions, right? Like Gordon has access to all of our documentation. So instead of you going and searching for that information, that would have been a lot of time. Gordon's going to go find that information for you, right? It's going to help you debug a container based on that information. So you still have to be there. It's not taking that job away. It's just optimizing the time spent trying to find that solution, you know?
Absolutely. Well, last but not the least, we have just started, we have not even completed first quarter of this year.
Yeah.
What do you think sales and revenue leaders should expect in 2025? Any
Yeah.
thoughts on trends we might see in the first half of the year?
I mean, I think we're touching on a really big one. I don't want to be repetitive, but AI is going to come into every part of the selling process, right? To help automate, as I mentioned before, a lot of those non-revenue generating tasks, those tedious tasks in the early research qualification stages. And I really, again, think we're going to see it expand that really predictive analytics side of things on buying intent, but also I fully believe we'll see it step into like on your forecasting side of things, right? As a seller, the likelihood of the deals you forecasted, helping you identify again the potential churn risks within your customer base and so on. And so I firmly believe that AI tools will become an even more essential part of every stage of that like sales funnel from prospecting to closing and forecasting your business. Other than that, another word that's probably used a lot, but I think there will be a continued shift toward a more product led type of sell, right? More companies are going to continue to truly adopt a PLG model where, that product itself is driving that initial acquisition and expansion. And then those sales teams can come in and really help to understand what that buyer wanted initially and how they expand that footprint. So that kind of land and expand with PLG at the forefront will continue. And, lastly, as sellers, I work with sellers obviously every single day. And as budgets in our economy, as things remain kind of tight, I think decision making is going to involve even more stakeholders than it's ever involved before. And I think sellers have to really understand that and being able to demonstrate the ROI of your solution and the use case and how it helps will be more critical than it's ever been, which again, that goes back to really being able to have a sales force that can really slow down, understand the customer, the issues, the pain points, or for current customers, understand the value, how to drive even more value for those current customers will be so important. And I think, sellers and leaders, myself included, will have to continue to refine their craft and their process and slow down and understand the customer and the problems. Those are the big ones for me.
Wow, those were some great answers, Lacey. I think it's a treasure trove of great knowledge for all our listeners. We are going to set aside work for a moment and
Okay.
we would like to get to know more about you as a person. The
Yeah.
questions will be quick and to the point. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah. Let's go.
Great. So, Texas, until let's say last 2 years, was not known as a tech hub. Well, we know that's changing now, thanks to
Yeah.
Elon. But I noticed you have spent the majority of your career there. What are the top two things you love about working in Texas?
So I would say the best thing about working in Texas is you can kind of get the best of both worlds. Like we do have these tech hubs that are happening. So for instance, Austin is this growing technical hub that a lot of people are moving to, but I sit a little bit outside of Austin. So I get the slower pace where I wanted in my smaller city that I live in. But as soon as I need to go, either to get great food or to meet customers, a lot of companies are headquartered in Austin. I can get there within 30 minutes. And so I think Texas is so big. You have this ability to be close to those hubs that are happening, but also still be able to get away to a little slower pace. I have a family three kids now, and so it's nice to be able to have both of those worlds right next to each other.
Great. What's the
Yeah.
last book you couldn't put down and why?
Yeah, so this is funny because our entire kind of sales team has just recently re-listened to the Qualified Sales Leader. They released that on audio, and so we've been doing a lot of deep dives into that. And I think what was so funny is I've read that book a lot, and it's just one of those books, The Qualified Sales Leader, that you can come back to at every stage of your career and kind of learn something new and remember. I read it a lot when I was an individual contributor, and then I read it when I was a first line leader. I'm getting completely different things out of it as a second line leader, and I think continue to enhance in my own process, my own operational rhythm, and that book's been really helpful just recently.
Wow. Interesting. Do you have anything specific you do when you want to celebrate a big win, either personally or professionally?
I love to, if it's someone on my team. I just promoted someone that I was just so excited about. And what I'm on maternity leave right now, but what I can't wait to do is to go out to dinner and kind of celebrate with them. And so I think those big milestones in your life, what you usually find is you want to go run and celebrate it with the people that you're really close to and that helps you get there. And so that's my favorite thing to do when something exciting happens, big things happen for myself or for others. I love to celebrate them together. Usually that looks like some really great food, some really great wine, hopefully. And so those are some of my favorite things to do.
Great. One experience you have had in life that few others would have had, maybe something unique. So I'll give you an example.
Sure.
In the last interview we did, we were talking to Chris, and he was stuck at sea for 9 days, which was, I mean, we'll talk
Oh.
about it later in depth, but any such unique experience you have had?
Yeah, I've never been stuck at sea for 9 days. That's a hard one to follow. I can't. I mean, mine goes all the way back to like when I was born. I was actually. Everyone jokes I took when it's my birthday. I just had my birthday in November. I'm the youngest of four siblings. They always say happy anniversary of your first helicopter ride because I had to be life flighted. There's some things going on, so I had to be life flighted in a helicopter to a different hospital. So I took my first helicopter ride.
Wow.
Hours old.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah,
It's really
yeah,
getting harder and harder for our guests to beat each other's unique experiences.
yeah.
Great. Thank you, Lacey. It was an amazing chat. I think a lot of insights from this chat, right from, slowing down to move fast, because, that helps you understand your buyers better. Docker is doing a lot in AI space, and looking forward for my developers to use Docker Labs and go and learn a lot of things. And of course, never stop learning, never stop getting curious. That is how you understand your buyer as a person, and the best way of selling is human selling, I think.
Yeah, completely agree.
Are there any final words of advice you would like to leave our audience with?
No, I would just tell people to, stay adaptable, continue to invest in data, continue to invest in AI, take those calls, understand those products, prioritize building really authentic relationships with your customers and understanding them. And I think you'll be in a really great spot going into this next year.
Great. Thank you, Lacey, and congratulations once again. I know your kids have outnumbered you guys now, as you said. Congratulations, and good luck for the rest of the year.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manisha. You too.